Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time to talk DC Comics for the week of May 10th, 2022. We're also going to mention or talk about the free comic book day offering, not the Super Pets one, but the other big one leading into the rest of the year for DC, because there's a checklist in Dark Crisis number 0 for the rest of the event, and you will notice that it runs all the way through December. So it's not one of those situations where they're going to, put it out weekly or bi-weekly and try to get it over with. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on in the other books. I mean, I'm assuming that at some point, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are not going to be in their regular books. They got to be dead at some point. If they're dead for half a year in Dark Crisis, which
Yeah,
say, Rocky?
well, I heard that the events of Justice League 75 takes place a few months ahead of what's currently occurring in all of the various DC comics. But I think that's actually what's going on here, because let's be blunt, we're going to be reviewing comics right now. It's quite obvious that Wonder Woman's still alive currently. I mean, if we, you know, obviously the timelines are a little bit wonky here in terms of continuity, because we're going to be reviewing various comics and the various Justice League members are still alive in the current comic book. So the events of Justice League 75, I think, must take place a few months from now in the mainstream timeline.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, what about Flashpoint Beyond? Does that tie in to Dark Crisis at all? Because that's the other quote unquote event that's going on right now. And we know that one was originally planned on as coming out every 2 weeks, and then DC pushed it back where it's coming out monthly now. But I did see on Twitter yesterday, Free Comic Book Day, as we're recording this, May 7th, I guess that would have been the first Saturday in May, as Free Comic Book Day always is, that Jeff Johns and Tim Sheridan and Jeremy Adams were all signing at Collector's Paradise in Hollywood. The team, the writing team for Dark Crisis. I was like, man, I really wish I was there, because I got a lot of questions after reading Dark Crisis 0, which we're gonna kind of lump it in with the rest of the books from last week. So hope you have had a chance to read it, but we'll talk about it first, I
Well,
guess, because it's
yeah,
on
yeah.
mine. And I thought it was the best book of the week. But before we get into that, we do have to mention, unfortunately, the second DC Spotlight in a row where we have to announce the passing of an absolute titan of the industry. So late Friday night, storyteller, penciler, creator, writer George Perez lost his battle with cancer. So we all knew this day was coming sooner than later, as he chose to spend the last of his time not getting treatment, but instead, spending it at home with his family rather than in and out of the hospital for treatments and whatnot. And so that, even though knowing it was coming, didn't lessen the impact, at least not for me. It's a tremendous loss. I mean, he was 67 years old. Well, that's not exactly a spring chicken. That's not really that old these days either to have passed away. So obviously, when he got diagnosed, his cancer was already stage 4. It's just a tremendous loss for the industry to lose Neil Adams and George Perez in the span of 8 days. I saw somebody on Twitter say, if you want to explain this to somebody who's not into comics at all, just say to them, imagine if Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg both died in the same week. That's the level of loss. That's the level of creative talent that we're talking about that's left us. And when you're talking about Perez, like, forget about his contributions to the Avengers, to Crisis on Infinite Earths, to Infinity Gauntlet, to creating the new Teen Titans. Put all that aside. Let's just talk about this man as a human being. One of the most genuine, loving, humble, sincere people I've ever met in my life. I remember asking him about doing an interview at a show one time, and he's like, I don't do interviews at shows because when I'm here, I want to dedicate every second I can to the fans that are here to see me, that line up, that want to get a commission or want to have a book signed or want to have an interaction with me. And I don't do too many interviews when I'm not at a show because I want to spend as much time as I can with my wife. So you got to respect somebody that has their priorities straight in that way. Was I disappointed to never have him on the show? Of course I was. Did I respect the hell out of him? Did I have great interactions with him every time I saw him? 100%. So there will never be another George Perez. It just won't happen. The guy was one of a kind, and my condolences to all his friends and family, and all of us comic fans have definitely lost something. Now that George Perez is no longer with us, I know he retired from penciling. He was having trouble with his eyes a few years ago, but even to just still have him around as a resource, as a treasure trove, tell stories and meet fans, that he still brought so much value to the industry in that way. And the whole world is a dimmer place for not having George Perez in it anymore. So yeah, it was hard. And again, even knowing it was coming, it didn't make it any less heartbreaking to know that he has passed on. But he's at peace. He passed away. He wasn't in pain. His pain was being managed and everything. And so again, best to his family and friends. Anything to add, Rocky?
Uh, George Perez formed part of the mythology of my childhood and of my formative years. I I did a 7-minute tribute to him, and I'll give a 30-second diatribe right now. I was born Roman Catholic, and I became an agnostic, and then I soon developed the religion of my life is formed from comic books. I believe in the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the formative formation of that was because of George Perez and the Crisis on Infinite Earths and the History of the DC Universe, Volume 2, which ended uh, talking about the golden rule and that the stuff of heroes is within us all. It's the ability to go beyond the normal routine and lend help to those who need it. Food to the hungry, freedom to the oppressed, safety to the victim, peace to the survivors of war. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. To be a hero is to live by those words. It's as simple as that. Those are the words of Harbinger at the end of the history of the DC Universe. Thank you, George Perez, for illustrating that beautiful compilation, and for Marv Wolfman for writing it. We have lost a legend. We have lost one of our giants for those of us who love comic books. And I am wearing, this is my dad's Hawaiian t-shirt as a tribute to George Perez, who loved wearing his own Hawaiian t-shirts with superheroes all over it. I lost my dad, 4 or 5 months ago. We've lost Perez. I, you know, this is personal to me. I really feel George Perez's loss more so than Neil Adams. Neil Adams was a legend, but I mean, I certainly feel that too. But this was really personal to me, and thank you, George Perez, for having the. I mean, what this guy did, he knew he was dying, and he decided to say, look, I'm going to go home and I'm going to let nature take its course. He allowed us the privilege of showing us our tributes to him over the past year. Many of us have done so. I did at least 2 live streams showing my love and tribute to George Perez. We talked about it before, and I thank him for that, because we got to celebrate his life while he was still around, to see how much we all loved his work, and his loss is a loss for all of us. And look, every time you complain about a DC crisis, you know who to blame. It's George Perez, but don't blame him, because his amazing art, every time you think of a crisis, it's impossible not to think about the amazing artwork that he did. Because when I remember Kurt Busiek said to George Perez, well, we're doing a panel with so many players on it. We need some Teen Titans. We need some Justice League. How many characters do you want to draw? And George Perez's typical response is usually all of them. And he drew all of them. And no one's been able to draw every character that well since, whether it's the Crisis, every DC character, whether it's Infinity Gauntlet, almost every Marvel character, or whether it's JLA versus Avengers, almost every character that's worthy of mention. The man is an artistic legend, and let's not forget the guy knew how to write as well, because he revitalized Wonder Woman and put her on the map as well. So much to say. George Perez, we love you, and hey, thank you for everything.
Yeah, it can't be overstated how, man, he could, with so much detail, he would always give you more than you ask for as a writer. So okay, well, let's go ahead and dive into Dark Crisis Zero. As I said, first book that we'll talk about. There is a checklist in the back. Again, kicks off in May. Justice League Road to Dark Crisis #1, and then June through December we have Dark Crisis #1 through 7, plus all these other tie-ins. Looks like the only regular series that it's tying into is Flash, with Flash issues 784 and 785. And then there are a bunch of other one-shots. Dark Crisis Young Justice has 6 issues. Dark Crisis World Without a Justice League. Dark Crisis Warzone. Dark Crisis World Without a Justice League Wonder Woman. So there's plenty of other tie-ins. So you can look at the checklist there to see what is coming. So this one-shot, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Daniel Sampere for the regular Dark Crisis. But in this issue, it's written by Williamson, but Jim Chung does the art, and I think I want to say Wilson Ramos, because I see the credits on the front cover. J. David Ramos actually does the colors, and then Tom Napolitano on letters. And so with this issue 0, the Justice League has already died, and we see somebody giving a tour to some kids of the Hall of Justice, and as this person is giving the tour, the kids are asking a bunch of questions. The tour guide gets annoyed by the questions the kids are asking, and come to find out the tour guide is Clayface. He's there to steal a mother box, and Wally West Flash shows up, defeats Clayface, and with the help of the kids, keeps the mother box out of the hands of Clayface. But where this issue really shines is in the characterization of Wally West by Joshua Williamson and what he talks about. He talks about losing his mentor during the first crisis, obviously that being Barry Allen, how he died in Crisis #8, and talking about whether there will be another Justice League. That's one of the things the kids are asking. If there will be another Justice League, or when there will be another Justice League. And Wally West said it's not really a question of if we'll have a new Justice League or when we'll have a new Justice League. The real question is who would be in the new Justice League. So again, I'm really, really excited about Dark Crisis. We do get a sneak preview that gives a little bit of a recap of everything that's happened recently and how we got to where we are with the Great Darkness. It's basically the eulogy that Nightwing is giving out in front of the Hall of Justice. We see just this huge crowd. Everybody has a candle lit, and they're all honoring those that have fallen before. So it's getting people up to speed, and I'm assuming these are the first pages of Dark Crisis because it says it's a sneak preview. But what I really want to know is what comes next, right? So many times we get a crisis in the DC universe, and it's to sort of reset things or clean up continuity issues or whatnot. So the big 3, along with other members of the Justice League, are off the table now. What's going to get cleaned up? Is Alfred going to come back? Are we going to get the Omniverse removed? Like what's going to be the state of the DCU? Not that I'm saddened or disappointed with the current state of the DC universe, but things are a little messy right now with this whole idea that everything counts and everything matters. So I wouldn't mind having a little bit more structure and a little more framework, and that's my hope for Dark Crisis, as far as sort of real world consequences go for the DCU. But at the end of the day, I just want it to be a good story. So, and I will also mention in Dark Crisis 0, there is sort of a recap of previous crises by Chris Burnham. It's just a few pages. Chris Burnham does the art. I think that one's written by Joshua Williamson as well, with Dennis Culver. And it's Chris Burnham and Rafa Sandoval on art. It's history of the DC multiverse, basically, with Hi-Fi and Matt Herms on colors. So I think this was a fantastic giveaway to get people up to speed. Hopefully it's enough to get people interested in picking up Dark Crisis, because I've said this before, but it certainly feels like this crisis has been promoted much less than Crisis on Infinite Earths, the first one, Infinite Crisis or Final Crisis. I know there have been some others like Heroes in Crisis, but to me that doesn't really count as a crisis, because that was never going to really change the structure of the DC universe the way the others have. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great giveaway, And if I lump this in with the other comics that came out for the week of May 4th, then or May 3rd, I guess is when these books dropped, then this is actually my book of the week. So, what do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent new comic book day comic. It's exactly what DC needs. I'm a little critical of DC marketing. I know that in my city here of Medicine Hat, Southern Alberta, DC basically sort of like they kind of like pooped the bed. They pulled an Amber Turd, and they only gave Canadian retailers 24 hours to place their final order cutoff for comic book for free comic book day. Accordingly, my retailer missed it in Medicine Hat because they never placed their order within the 24 hours they were only given. And so I was at my local library, and there was over 35 free comic book day titles, and DC wasn't among them because of DC blundering again at the editorial level or at the marketing level because some retailers missed it, and uh, it's just it's sad. It's unfortunate because this is an absolutely crucial book. Now, but at the same time, this is another crisis. There's been too many crises, and one can judge for themselves whether or not uh, uh, people are going to give this attention. I want people to give this attention. I think this is I already think that this is going to be better from quality in terms of storytelling than Death Metal was. But I think people are sick of DC crises, and I fear, my biggest fear is that people aren't going to give this crisis enough attention. They're not going to give this because they're tired of a crisis. This is too soon. We coming out of Death Metal, we had Future State. We still have confusion as to whether or not Future State exists because we have this title called Gotham State, Future State Gotham, which shouldn't exist, but it does. We have this, and we had the death of the Justice League tied into a dark crisis. I think people, I think the timing of this and everything is just, it leaves much to be desired. But I actually think the story is interesting. I think this is a very interesting story. I think this is heading towards something. I feel that this new legacy of Justice League characters of Jackson Hyde, of John Kent, of Jace's Batman. I think of Yara Flores, Wonder Girl, the future Wonder Woman. I think there's potential here, but I feel that there's been a lack of appropriate organic development to really make them shine. But maybe they're going to shine in this dark crisis because they're going to step up to the plate because they have to. The Justice League is dead as of Justice League 75, and I think that this opening issue does a good job of dumbing down. It's like DC Crisis for Dummies, and that's what we need. I mean, even a longtime reader like myself, guess what? Surprise, surprise! I drink a lot and I forget. I like to have a reminder once in a while. What happened in the past, and that's what this gives. So this is a really good primer for readers, and I really hope people give Free Comic Book Day Dark Crisis a look-see, and I really hope that they give Dark Crisis a chance and pick up Justice League 75, pick up this free comic book Dark Crisis issue, and stick with it for Dark Crisis, because I really do think that Joshua Williamson is going to be building something here. And so don't let the naysayers, I ask people not to give in to the naysaying or their cynicism, of which I share from time to time. I do think DC is headed toward better and brighter days. Let's keep our fingers crossed. God forbid, let us be optimistic.
Yeah, and I think I want to say that the new comic book day is available digitally for free also. So I did get it for free at my local shop, but then I also paid a premium for this, which is
Nice.
a foil version of it with no trade dress.
Awesome.
Well, you guys can see that. So
yeah,
I dropped a decent amount of money at my local shop. I actually went in on Friday when I got back into town, and he already had to put up a bunch of new wall books in preparation for new comic day. But I was like, I'm not waiting till tomorrow because I don't know what time I'll be able to get here, and that's going to be gone, and that's going to be gone, and that's going to be gone. So I picked up a few different things, a couple Moon Knights that I already had, but they were good. It was a good price for like that Bill Sienkiewicz black cover, Captain Marvel Thanos issue I needed, and a Captain America issue, a couple other things. So anyway, yeah, I echo Rocky's sentiments about people being probably a little tired of crises, and I don't know. I think maybe I mean, I know at this point it's a hallmark of DC to call these events crises, but yeah, like maybe call it something like if you just called this Death of the Justice League, that got people's attention. Um, and if you just called it like I don't know, Death of the Justice League Aftermath, you might not scare people away. So anyway, let's move on to the first book that we're going to talk about. It's um, a new milestone title, Blood Syndicate Season 1, Number 1. So this was a book back in the day, a milestone book back in the day, one of their team books, and we get the first issue. But I don't know about your copy, Rocky, but I didn't see any credits in my copy. Now I'm
Yeah.
just based on the fact that it's the front cover, we can say, well, it's written by Jeffrey Thorne. Chris Cross does the art, but I don't know like Castro and Quintana that are credited as well. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming one of them did inks maybe over Chris Cross, another one did the colors, but I don't actually know who did what. So apologies to the creative team because I can't give proper credit. But anyway, what did you think of this issue?
Oh, sorry about this. I don't know what happened here. Let's see here. I thought this was good. One of the advantages I think of the milestone characters or the milestone comics is that I do think it's I find the continuity easier to catch on to. Like I do think it's more accessible. I think it's accessible. It's the milestone universe is not the DC universe. So it's not in this it's in a universe where it has its own it's literally got its own hero. So this is in the same universe that Icon and Rocket are in, that Static are in, and that Hardware is in. And so this Blood Syndicate is sort of building in that same world. And I like this because right away we're sort of delved in. We got a military unit here, and the characters in this unit ultimately end up going back to Dakota City where they discover firsthand about the existence of superheroes and Icon and Rocket and what have you, and they you know they come across their own adventures, and it's this is building the mythology of the in the Milestone universe that I think is very much needed. I love the art by Chris Cross. It's really good. I I I think it's amazing. Actually, it's probably this is quite frankly this is better quality art that I wish this quality of art was in some of the mainstream DC titles. I quite enjoyed this. I thought that if you're looking, I find this accessible too. This is an easy to understand storyline. It's starting from scratch. We're getting to know these characters, and I want to be upfront about my own ignorance up front. I never collected or read the Milestone comics when they came out back in 1996. I feel like I'm learning about Icon and Rocket and Static and Hardware and now the Blood Syndicate for the first time. So I'm coming in blind here. So I can't gift anyone listening to this or watching this with any sort of foreknowledge in terms of what the Blood Syndicate exactly is. But they're basically a group. I'm assuming this is sort of like I'm getting the impression this is sort of like the Justice League version of the of the Milestone universe, and that's what I think is cool. And I love the character work here. I love the character work. Each character has their own voice. I love the fact that they seem almost these are military men that are sort of they one of them has powers metahuman abilities in their own right, but they also come into their own in terms of they're becoming acclimated to the reality that they got superheroes in their world of Icon and Rocket, of Static, of Hardware, and they have their own misadventures within their own neighborhood. And quite frankly, I like the fact that this is kind of like the Black America. This is something where, frankly, I I kind of ignored it in 1996. It wasn't really my cup of tea, and now I got to admit I'm a little bit more curious now than I have been in the past. And this is good writing. I find it entertaining. I One of my fears is that I this is something where I hope more people give this an opportunity to give this a chance because the art's really good. I think I think the storytelling has a lot of potential. We're at the this is a almost like a milestone rebirth of what began to take off in 96 but wasn't allowed to fully bloom or blossom back then, and it has the opportunity now. The characters are worth exploring. The art is truly fantastic. Some of the pages are really good here, and I encourage anyone, if you see Blood Syndicate #1, pick this up, give it a read, and dare I say, I think you're going to be tempted maybe to check out the other titles in the Milestone universe, because look, there's so many things that you can do right now in the comic book universe, in the comic book world. But if you want to get into a world that you can enjoy and has its own continuity that's easy to catch on to, it's not a lot of comics to buy to get caught up on what's happening in Icon and Rocket, Static, Hardware, and I'll check out Blood Syndicate. It's pretty cool here. It's pretty cool. And I enjoyed this opening issue, and I think it's worth for people checking out, because you got it's kind of like the Hood, and but it's cool. You got some pretty awesome characters. You got superpowers. You got the military. You got metahumans all around Dakota City, and it's sort of like if in my view, it's sort of like a superhero, a meta version of like combining Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but throwing some superheroes and metahumans with it and a little bit of politics. And that's what this is. It's an eclectic mix of all those things, which frankly, I find really interesting right now. And I really hope people give it a look-see.
Yeah, I wasn't as big of a fan of it as you. I think the potential here is off the charts. So while I read Static and I read Hardware and Icon, I didn't read Blood Syndicate. I bought a few issues back in the day, but I never read it. So I'm not that familiar with them either. I just know that it was the team book from Milestone. So I think the problem that I have with it, there's a couple of things. So it sort of suffers from what we've seen some of the other Milestone books, specifically Hardware, suffer from, in that it seems like there's a lot of story here, so much so that it sort of overstuffs the issue. Because I found the while the art from panel to panel is very good, sometimes the transitions are really choppy. But again, that's because there's so much story here that Chris Cross is trying to cover. I mean, there's one page where the first panel is a car pulling up. The next panel is the reaction of the people who are standing on the sidewalk. The next panel is the car pulling, like actually stopping in front of them. Next panel is they're shooting guns. Next panel is the people dodging the bullets. It's not the best transitions. Like, you can get the gist of what's going on, but when you look at the page overall, it's just choppy. And everything is the same level, and so everything is the same view. It's all medium depth, looking straight on. There's nothing like moving the camera around or zooming in or anything like that. And so it's not the best in terms of narrative storytelling. But again, I think the reason for that is because the story that Jeffrey Thorne is telling, there's a lot to cover in only 20 pages, 22 pages, whatever it is. So I get that, and it's the same problem that Hardware had, trying to find its footing and its pacing and whatnot. So it's a minor nitpick, and again, the potential to get it right and eventually get there, the story will be fantastic. It's not like I'm going to stop reading it because it was a little choppy visually. The other thing that was a little wonky for me is the scripting from Jeffrey Thorne. And again, I know that he's trying to have these guys like speak the way they speak and have it be authentic, but it's the difference between having words that are spoken in live action, when you use that kind of slang and whatnot, and having it read. When you use slang in a comic that's read, it doesn't translate as well as what it might be if somebody were speaking it out loud. And the other thing it does to use slang is it dates the comic. So in 10 years, somebody's going to be reading this going, what the heck kind of words are these? It's like, it would be like if somebody wrote a comic nowadays and we're using like groovy and far out man and that kind of stuff. So I'm not really a fan of doing that. And again, I get that he's trying to give these characters authentic voices, but there is a difference between scripting for something that's read out loud and scripting for a comic where it's not read out loud, basically. So, but again, it's a minor nitpick. I am a big fan of Jeffrey Thorne when he writes something other than Green Lantern. Get him away from John Stewart, and the guy's a pretty strong writer. So I'm in on this. Again, I think the art is fantastic as well. You know, when we're just talking about single panels, it's only in the transitions where sometimes it gets a little wonky, but I understand why. And I think obviously as it goes along and we get to know these characters and they're a little bit more fleshed out, I think that Thorne will probably be able to settle in with the voices and the dialogue for the characters as well. So yeah, I'm really curious because again, I didn't read Blood Syndicate back in the day. I know much less about Blood Syndicate than I do Static and Hardware and Icon and Rocket. So we'll see how that all plays out. Okay, up next we have Superman, Son of Kal-El. We're up to issue number 11. This is written by Tom Taylor. We have art by Ciaran Tormey. Colors are by Federico Blee and Matt Herms. Letters by Dave Sharp. There's a fantastic interaction in this issue between Jonathan Kent, and I mean Pa Kent, and Batman, which to me made the issue. It once again shows the strength of Tom Taylor's writing. It's all about characterization for him, and giving these characters really good voices and authentic voices. The fallout of the bombshell that Batman dropped last issue. On the final page, he basically told John Kent and Lois Lane, hey, you can't trust Jay Nakamura, much to Rocky's delight, since Rocky has that prejudice against characters with pink hair. Never trust a guy with pink hair. So I thought that was interesting. You know, that this issue picks up right where that one left off, with John like, man, there's not too many people that I'm afraid of. You know, I'm invulnerable. I shouldn't fear people, but there are exceptions, but I'm still going to stand up to Batman. He says, Batman, you're wrong. And John struggles with that. But again, the characterization being the strength of what Tom Taylor does. So John Kent could do any number of things. He could investigate like Batman would, right? Let me find out what's going on. Let me learn about, what Jay's been up to and sneak around and try to get the answers. And when John Kent, he doesn't know what to do, he goes to Nightwing, and we saw that relationship has been established a few issues ago very strongly, that Nightwing in a way is a mentor for John. He says, you're not that guy. You're not that paranoid guy. You're not that distrustful guy. So you got to do you. And John's like, maybe I'll just talk to him. And Nightwing's, yeah, that's more on brand with who you are, right? You're just going to go and straight out ask. And he does. And Jay gives him the answer, and you understand where Batman's coming from, and you understand where Jay's coming from and where John's coming from. And, it's not black and white. Did Jay have interactions, and did he work with this group that could be considered terrorists? Yes, he did. Did he have a good reason for doing it? Yes, he did. So, your mileage may vary on whether or not you feel that Jay can be trusted or not, but it all felt very authentic. And then the action scene with the quote unquote Burning Man, one of the superpowered beings that Henry Bendix put the little bomb in their head, a la Suicide Squad. That's pretty much the rest of the issue, with John figuring out, hey, Bendix is not only controlling these people, he's seeing through their eyes. He's using them as like kind of living surveillance equipment. And what's going to happen to this guy? Can we get some answers? And at the end of the day, Henry Bendix and Lex Luthor realized that John Kent's a lot more formidable than maybe they had given him credit for being. And I've been pretty critical of this title being called Superman, because I feel like John Kent hasn't earned it. I still feel that way, but I feel like at least he's on the right path. He's learning. He's getting better. And it's cool the way he uses a mixture of microscopic X-ray and heat vision to remove the bomb from the guy's head or destroy it, keep it from blowing up. Like, it's things like that. But he still has a long way to go in my mind before he's Superman. But at least Tom Taylor has him on the right path. So I did enjoy this issue. I thought the Ciaran Tormey art was pretty solid. His storytelling is really, really great. For me, it could use a little more detail. The rendering gets a little wonky at times. He uses kind of a thicker line than I'm used to him seeing. So that kind of gives the images a little more of a static feel rather than a feel of movement and a flow. But it's a minor nitpick. Overall, the art's really strong. What did you think of this one, Rocky?
Same criticisms as before. Just snail pace plotting, but absolutely really good character development. I mean, there's character moments here that continue to be really good. I mean, look, I mean, John Kent, I mean, every time, it doesn't matter who John Kent is talking to, whether it's Batman or Flash or Adam or a potential victim or a hero or a villain, you really get a sense of who John Kent is and that his struggles and his desire to help people. And one of the things that I think is shining through here, and you touched upon it, Jace, when you talked about you yourself, and I shared your cynicism about this isn't a Superman yet. He's still a Superboy. Why do they call this Superman, son of Kal-El? He's still a Superboy. Well, I will give Tom Taylor credit. I do feel as if John Kent is also struggling with that question. And that makes, as a reader, I feel good about that, because when I know the character has doubts about the quality of his character that I do as the reader, that at least endures me to the character a little bit. John Kent is self-aware about the judgments against him, including my own judgments and yours. You're not a Superman yet. You're a boy. Good Lord, you were a 10-year-old in a volcano with Ultraman. You're not Superman. Who are you kidding? So at least there's a little bit there where he's at least aware of that and he struggles with that. But I also like the fact that he's utilizing the extra powers that he has. It's been touched upon, dare I say, even by Bendis when he scripted John, that John actually has some powers that his father doesn't have. John Kent has the ability to utilize his various vision powers in manners upon which even his own father, Kal-El, does not have the capabilities of doing so. And he utilizes that to good effect to actually save the fire guy here from having his head explode. And again, I do struggle. I like the character work at the same time. I like plots that move forward because of I like character driven plots. And I don't necessarily feel that this is a character driven plot. I feel that this is a slow plotting plot that's taken forever to play out. And in the meantime, all this stuff, like, we didn't need these character moments in order to move the plot. On the other hand, I'm kind of sounding like a hypocrite because I just did all this complaining, and then I have to acknowledge that I kind of enjoyed the character moments. And yet at the same time, I'm frustrated with the lack of this plot moving forward. And to be honest, I have a sneaking suspicion, even the way I actually still agree with Batman. I actually think that John Kent is, if this was written, if another writer could come along, John Kent's making a catastrophic error. His blind faith in Jay Nakamura is astonishing in his naivete. You're gonna ask him why? Because your grandfather tells you to. I mean, no offense, but Jonathan Kent's
ability. The hate from Rocky on the pink hair.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I mean, the fact of the matter is that this kid doesn't know. I mean, Jay Nakamura, that's nothing. I mean, Jay Nakamura could be playing John Kent like a violin, and he wouldn't be. He's like an instrument, and he wouldn't know better. And all because what? He's got a good. He's a good kisser. I mean, come on.
Any character.
I mean, if I'm on Team Batman on this. Like, Batman should be looking at Jonathan Kent saying, Jonathan, I know he's named after you, but for God's sakes, stop, quit being so naive here. I mean, I'm just saying there's so many reasons to not. Batman is 100% correct here. And at least, but I will say this in defense of the scripting here, John Kent at least acknowledges that Batman could be right. And that's one of the things that annoys John Kent. Goddamn, maybe Batman's right. Maybe I'm letting my feelings get in the way of this. So Tom Taylor does a good job acknowledging that. And I say this as a compliment. If I'm sounding negative, it's an underhanded compliment that I'm giving Taylor, because I'm creating for Tom Taylor. I admit I'm giving him an impossible task. I want the plot to move forward faster, and yet I want my cake and eat it too, because I want the character moments Well, he's giving me the character moments, and then I bitch about the plot. So I'm aware of my own hypocrisy, and but that's what keeps me glued to this title. That's what keeps me coming back to it month after month, and why I am enjoying it. And I don't mind being frustrated if it's frustrations that where is this going? So I'm I'm there. I'm there, and I admit that maybe I'm being a little bit hard on it. But anyways, I I think this is a title that's worthy of continuing to being checked out because this is the son of Superman. So of course he's going to come under scrutiny, and I'm giving him a lot of scrutiny. I'm giving him the gears. But so far, John Kent is stepping up to the plate, and if he keeps this up, I'm going to be calling this guy Superman in the months to come.
I mean, I guess we should never trust any new character ever then, if they because they could be bad. I mean, like that's true of every single character ever created in comics when they come in. Never trust anybody, and that's the whole point of what Nightwing tells John Kent. Like that's Batman. He never trusts
true.
anybody. He never.
Good
So
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
anytime anybody shows up, just assume they have ill intentions.
Yeah.
That's what Bruce Wayne does. That's not John Kent. It's not Superman. So I get it. Could Jay be bad? Yeah, but anybody could be bad.
Yeah.
If the writer wants, Barbara Gordon could be bad. Barbara Gordon could stab Dick Grayson, and put him in a coma. Like whatever the writer wants at this point, to pull the rug out from under us. So anyway, let's move on. Sandman Universe Nightmare Country, written by James Tynion. We've got Lissandro Esterin as the artist on the first part of the story. Andrea Sorrentini, guest artist for the second part. Patricio Del Pesce does the colors for the Lissandro Esterin art. Jordi Belair on the Andrea Sorrentino art. Simon Bullen does the lettering for the whole thing. I don't have much to say about this. It's interesting. I think it's interesting that it's Black Label for the Sandman universe. I wouldn't know what's in continuity and out of continuity for the Sandman universe if you held a gun to my head. But this is an interesting horror story. And when it comes to horror, I mean, I don't know that James Tynion can write a bad horror story. At least I've never read one. But that's all I really have to say about it. It's interesting enough, but I wouldn't necessarily be missing anything if I didn't read it, because it's not my particular cup of tea. But I know you enjoyed it a lot more than me, Rocky. What'd you think?
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it, and let me be absolutely clear. I couldn't tell you anything about the Sandman universe. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but not enough that I would never pretend to school anybody about it. I I just first of all the covers on this series are incredible. Every single one, whether it's cover A, cover B, or the variant cover, all are amazing. And this is about this guy named Corinthian. He's got like teeth. His eyes are basically teeth, and he basically he kind of like he sort of has some control over nightmares, and he gives people nightmares. But somebody else, this agony and the agony and the ecstasy, these two sort of like uh these two crazy mythological characters that, and again, I don't know a lot about them either. They're after, they want to kill this, they want to kill the sort of like the protagonist here, who's this artist, and she's having these visions, and these visions of these these visions of things which may or may not be true, and they need to kill her. And this Corinthian guy, he's trying to figure all this out in terms of what's going on, but he's being a creature of the Sandman universe. Clearly something is up. And look, I actually, there's something really crazy about the art here. Sandro Estherin, the artist, does a really good job. I love Patricio De Pulci's colors are great. James Tynion here, I think this is reminiscent of. It reminds me a little bit of Something Is Killing the Children. Is that he's, you can tell that in his scripting of the characters, there's, the protagonist here, she's got sort of an antagonistic relationship with the Corinthian, and she's worried that he wants to kill her, but he doesn't. Although he's a crazy character. He's got teeth for eyes, and he's trying to get to the bottom of who's killing all these people that are apparently are ostensibly utilizing his identity in doing so. And then you got these assassins called the Agony and the Ecstasy that are hunting down all these people that are having these dreams. This is an interesting story. I'm not really sure mythologically how everything sort of maybe ties into the larger Sandman universe, but this is an interesting read. If you don't you're not going to be. I'm not lost. I do think things are a little bit out there, but I'll be honest with you. If you can understand a DC crisis, you can definitely understand the first two issues here of Nightmare Country. I think this is an interesting read. I think it's accessible enough. I would encourage people to check this out. The Sandman universe is so much fun. I think it's relatively accessible, and it's one of those gems that if you have an opportunity, this is only $3.99 an issue. And quite frankly, the irony is that I think this is more accessible and easier to get into than frankly a lot of mainstream DC comics, and it's actually cheaper. So I would give this I would recommend this and get people to check this out. This is actually this week I thought was fairly weak for DC Comics. I actually enjoyed this Nightmare Country more than I did most of the DC comics, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so up next, and I don't even know if Rocky's still following along with this or not, but it's Future State Gotham. Believe it or not, we're up to issue 13. This thing's been around over a year now. So we have Batman at war, whatever happened to Bruce Wayne, and it's interesting because we get the first 6 issues, or first 6 pages rather, are pages from Future State Dark Detective number 4 that we get. They're Dan Mora art, and we get them in black and white, and they look fantastic. And then we also get some Otto Schmidt art because we get pages 10 through 13 of this were originally presented in Future State Catwoman number 1 and 2 by Ram V, Otto Schmidt, and Tom Napolitano. So, to Rocky's point earlier, we know that the things that have happened in the current day DC universe have precluded the Future State Gotham that we saw, or Future State reality that we saw come to pass. So it's never going to happen. So why does this book still exist? Why are they still tying into that possible future that's not going to happen? I don't know. But at the end of the day, the story's gotten good. So this is issue, the stuff that's not reprints, is written by Dennis Culver. Art is by Jaffo. Covers by Simone DeMeo. Lettered by Troy Petrie. We don't have any colors because I don't know why DC doesn't put colors on this thing. Because this art by Jaffo isn't really that, isn't as manga influenced as some of the other artists that we've had, like Gianno Milagianis. And, the Otto Schmidt art, it's a little saturated because, he does his own coloring. So everything has kind of this grayish filter over it, but it still works. And the Dan Moore art actually is fantastic in black and white. But in terms of the actual story we get here, Dick Grayson, after having taken the brain, which is basically venom, but for your mind, and as opposed to venom, the venom serum, which is for your physical body, he actually takes up the mantle of Batman. And again, this ties into Bruce Wayne just being rescued from the train after the magistrate headquarters was blown up. So I guess if you really loved that Future State storyline, then you're getting a lot more context with what's going on here. Now we're finally going to move past those events of Future State Catwoman and Future State Gotham, or Future State Dark Detective, and you'll know what's to come next. So it's sort of interesting to see Hush in this future sort of dystopian world, this fascist world, trying to bring all the villains together. And at the end, maybe the most important thing that happens in the issue, and this has been hinted at before in other stories, is we have Damian show up. This is a Damian that's fully grown up, but has spent the last few years in hell, believing that Bruce Wayne, his father, died, and he was in hell searching for him. So now he shows up back in Gotham. He somehow coerced or bribed Grifter to bring him back, and he's Batman 666 as opposed to Batman 66, which is Adam West. Damian Wayne is Batman 666, this much more demonic Batman. And next issue, Unfortunate Son. So it's probably going to be a Damian that I'm not going to care for much. Sounds like he's actually going to be the antagonist. What happens with Hush? What happens with Dick Grayson as a de facto Batman? I guess we'll all have to wait and see. But it's just too bad that this book started off so wonky, that I wouldn't be reading this if I hadn't gotten press previews for it, right? Like I would have read like the first issue or two and been done with it. But I've stuck with it because, again, press preview, and it has gotten to be an interesting title. I am curious, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. This is a future that's not going to come to pass, and I still don't understand why it's in black and white. Doesn't need to be. So, anyway, any thoughts, Rocky?
Uh, I don't. It. Okay. I want to be polite to this. There's probably a decent enough story here, but I just kind of largely ignore this. I mean, I'm just not into this. I didn't even know. I The entire premise of this story of, what happened to Bruce Wayne. We already know what happened to Bruce Wayne in Future State, and then Future State never happened anyway. So why does this comic exist? And then when you said that, I had no idea that this was duplicating pages that we already saw in Catwoman. I could, those are the exact same pages. I guess they are. I'd never really thought about it. So I guess I'll take your word for it. All the more reason why this comic shouldn't exist. Why does this comic exist if this is a duplication? I I just um was this supposed to flush out more of the story? I guess if Future State was something that was compelling to all of us, maybe we'd all be jumping on this. But as you so aptly pointed out, the obvious, it's not in color. Why not? Did they get lazy? I mean, the cost of the comic book certainly, in my view, suggests that it ought to be in color. Uh, Sorry, it's expensive comic book, but it's not. And I don't know, like, again, I don't want to take away from the story. Maybe it's good enough, but it's an alternative tale. It's an Elseworlds tale. But at some point, people suggested it was Future State. It was maybe going to be something that happened, but now it doesn't really matter. Who cares? Who's buying this? I don't I don't know. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about it. I would be astonished if the sales for this are high because I'm stunned by this. I'm stunned by this. This is exactly this. This is wasted creative potential because Dennis Culver, let's be clear here. This isn't an insult to Dennis Culver. I think he held his own. I think at the beginning of Future State, I mean, there was some pretty bad storytelling there, but I think he's gotten better under the help with Joshua Williamson. And I think that there's probably a decent story here, but I think it's just wasted on this Future State storyline, which frankly, I've got no interest in knowing how it ends. I'd rather have his talents focused elsewhere than on this title. And I say that with great respect to him. I mean no disrespect to the creatives on this. I really don't. Unfortunately, this was a failure of concept, not a failure of the talent that's working on it. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's definitely a failure of concept as opposed to the talent. It just doesn't work. So anyway, moving on. I Am Batman #9. This is written by John Ridley. I thought this was a pretty solid issue. Christian Duce and Steven Segovia handle the art duties. They share them, I should say. Rex Locust on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. We saw Jace Fox get his ass handed to him in a fight last issue, and it was very shocking and it felt just very weird to see Batman get his butt kicked. But I love the fact that John Ridley is leaning into it. He's not shying away. Clearly did it on purpose to sort of shake up Jace Fox, and it's working for me. So what do you think of this one, Rock?
I really enjoyed this. This is probably my second or tied with first for my favorite comic of the week. I really enjoyed this one. I continue to be impressed with what John Ridley is doing with with Jace Fox as the new Batman in New York City. I'm really enjoying this. His struggles with Man Ray, and particularly what I really love is, I mean, I love the character work here. I early on, I know that when we talked earlier, when Jace was really first introduced to us, really in Future State, I know that you'd commented a few times yourself, Jace, about you weren't pulled in by the character work, but with the Fox family. But I think it's really coming into its own here. I like the relationship between him and Tiffany and Tammy, and his father and his mother, is a member of city, who's got some city influence in New York City. The Foxes moved to New York City to exert their influence, but they also came with an expectation of creating a new life. And there's a relationship now between between the New York City Police Department and Batman. Batman was humiliated and easily beaten by Man Ray last issue. He's a little bit insecure about that, and this issue opens up with Jace's Batman sort of like beating the hell out of sort of like a loser, sort of an assassin, but maybe overcompensating, like beating him almost. They one of the lieutenants, she had to stop him from probably beating the guy to death or to serious injury. And it's clear that Jace is sort of overcompensating for the fact that he was so badly beaten by Man Ray. And so he's going through something here. And I like that because it sounds cliche, but it's very important to these superhero comics with us readers. I like to know that my hero has flaws, that they're not perfect, that they fail and that they got something to overcome, and that they're, even Batman, regardless of whether it's Bruce Wayne as Batman or Jace, it's nice to know that, look, they're going to fail from time to time. How do you deal with failure? Tell me how you show me how this character deals with failure. I'll show you the man that he is. And this is Jace dealing with that and struggling with that while in the midst of all the political machinations of what's going on in New York City between the potential corruption in the New York City Police Department and the higher ups, and just dealing with this new Man Ray villain as a whole. And I particularly love the way that it ends here with Man Ray throwing a curveball. Man Ray apparently is a villain that only kills corrupt officials, but at the end, he appears to be threatening the life of Mayor Villanova. And Villanova, we have heretofore come to believe, is actually a good mayor who's made some mistakes. Mayor Villanova made the mistake of hiring a police commissioner that was a racist and a bigot, despite and being unaware that he had done so. But suddenly now, Mayor Villanova is on the hit list of the Man Ray. And what's disturbing about that is that Man Ray only goes after corrupt officials. And so the suggestion that Mayor Villanova might also be corrupt is a problem, is a potential problem for, of course, the new Batman here. But I love the character work here. I'm really intrigued. I'm pulled in by this. This is John Ridley. John Ridley is these first 9 issues of I Am Batman are much better than how John Ridley started off. He's coming into his own. This is a Batman that I'm interested in. And to be quite frank, I kind of like it. And I'm actually enjoying the character work here more than I'm enjoying the current Batman in Shadow War, if I'm being brutally honest. Maybe he's not as popular a Batman, but in terms of character work and storytelling, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Again, I think where this series really hit its stride is when they took Jace Fox out of Gotham City, get him out from under the shadow of Bruce Wayne. I still feel like they should be calling him something else, only because, and not even that he hasn't earned it, but he's so different than Bruce, right? He doesn't, like, what is it that makes him Batman? Like, other than he's wearing a costume that looks like a bat, there's not really a reason. But I get it. Like, there's this argument, well, if you want more African American characters, don't have them be derivatives of other characters, just make them their own characters. But then at the same time, you want to be able to say, okay, well, a diverse or a person of color or a diverse cast can still be a legacy character as well. So I see both sides. I don't really have an answer. What I do have is a recommendation. Read this book because it's really damn good. And it still does have that soap opera feel, though, of this, Fox family and, billionaires, and they have money and whatever, and they're doing the best they can to help less privileged. So I do appreciate that, but a lot of character interaction, soap opera feel exists as well. So, all right, up next we have Justice League versus Legion of Superheroes. This is written by Brian Michael Bendis. The art is by Scott Godlewski. Colors are by Ryan Cody. Letters by Dave Sharp. This is an interesting dynamic from Bendis here. It's sort of Bendis-y in its amount of dialogue. There's a ton of it here, but it does go relatively quickly. It is a relatively fast-paced issue, and we're halfway through, and I'm still not exactly sure what the heck's going on. It's clear that the Great Darkness is doing some sort of time travel manipulation stuff. We've gotten some hints that the Gold Lantern's actually the cause of it, but we don't really know. The art is a little messy for me, but it's not even the line work that bothers me the most. It's the colors. the colors just seem off to me. I don't know if it's the press preview copy I have or whatnot, but it seems like the entire book has this like green tint to it that I really didn't care for at all. So ultimately, I'm not really a big fan of Bendis's version of the Legion of Superheroes. Um, his Justice League run I thought was all right. We're 3 issues into this, and I don't know where the heck it's going. I feel like everything that's happened so far could have fit in an issue and a half. So yeah, I don't really have much more to say than that because I don't feel like anything's happening. You want to talk about a plotting plot? Not. I don't completely disagree with Rocky that Nightwing does move pretty slow at times, but it's lightning speed compared to how fast this story is moving. So I don't know. This is just not working for me. You feel differently, Rocky?
No, I don't. I agree with you. And I'll just give a little bit more meat on a little bit more flesh on the bones that you sort of established there with your constructive criticism, and that is that straight up, the fact that Batman is on the cover and not a single member of the Legion of Superheroes is on issue 3 of 6 tells you how far DC has fallen and how far the Legion of Superheroes has fallen. I mean, really? Not a single member of the Legion of Superheroes is on this cover to issue 3. I mean, I know that you need Batman to sell comics, DC, but really? Do you have no faith at all in the Legion of Superheroes? I'm sorry, but that's inexcusable. Even the cover B has Ultra Boy with Batman on it. This is the Legion of Superheroes in the Justice League. How about a little bit of ounce of creative effort and artistic effort put into drawing a cover that's worthy of a crossover between what used to be a team that could outsell or at least meet the sales of X-Men. That was Legion of Superheroes. How far the mighty team has fallen that you need Batman on everything. Shame on them, really. At least project some degree of confidence. Now, that's me a little bit on a soapbox and a rant. But you're right about the story. Nothing happens here. This is literally, we already knew that this is it in a nutshell. We got a the Great Darkness. Basically, a ball of Great Darkness has shown itself in the 31st century and in the 21st century. The Gold Lantern finds himself in the 21st century confronting this bundle of black darkness, and then the Justice League that went back, that traveled to the future to return Triplicate Girl, or two-thirds of the Triplicate Girl to the 31st century. They're in the 31st century dealing with the black darkness, and they're trying to figure it out. And this whole issue is them just figuring it out. It's just dialogue. It is literally, sadly, just pointless dialogue of all the characters talking about what we all know is happening. They're basically talking about how they don't know what's going on. And we have this bundle of darkness. What do? Batman does his detective work in the 31st century by letting Computo do it. I mean, wouldn't that be... Batman isn't even Batman. If all you have to do is to be Batman in the future is ask your computer, Computo, tell me who did this. Tell me who in the future has access to time travel technology. Oh, they figure it out. Oh, well, this references the Justice League Annual, where somebody, if you recall, those who read the Justice League Annual... And this is another weakness, is that this references an annual that nobody probably read. There was a Justice League Annual where a time traveler called Epoch traveled to the 21st century and warned the Justice League about a future time traveler called the Gold Lantern, and mentioned something about the Great Darkness. Okay, that's all well and good, but what of it? The problem is, all they've done is mentioned what's happened in the past. They haven't provided no actual clues. Various members, we have Brainiac and Monel and Naomi, lost at different parts of the time-space continuum. And so all they're the various members of the Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes are scattered across time. At one point, one of them meet Kamandi, and in the future, where naturally there's a Leviathan symbol. Well, Leviathan already is a joke in the present. So to have he's a joke in the present. There's no gravitas in suggesting that Leviathan is a threat in the future of Kamandi, 10,000 years hence. This is complete nonsense. There's nothing at stake here. We already know we've already experienced the death of the Justice League. We already know that the Great Darkness is a big deal. this takes away from the threat of the Great Darkness, because if because this Great Darkness is a joke. It just appears in two different time periods, and that's it. So this actually takes away for me. This takes away from how serious I'm supposed to take the Great Darkness. I realize that continuity is wonky in the DC universe. Maybe this entire series should have come out before Dark Crisis, before the death of the Justice League. But this is exactly why, frankly, I don't think this series should exist. How does this help us? Like, what does this have to do with the Great Darkness? In fact, let me ask this question. The Great Darkness saga, Paul Levitt's classic Legion of Superheroes storyline, that Great Darkness saga, does that have anything to do with this Great Darkness? Furthermore, does it have anything to do with the Great Darkness that is taking place in Dark Crisis?
I always made the assumption that that Great Darkness is the same Great Darkness.
Sure. I hope you're right. I'm assuming that too, but it feels less here, because the biggest joke, we're 3 issues into this crossover, and we get more superfluous dialogue, and we have this bundle of Great Darkness, a ball of Great Darkness, that is just sitting there doing nothing while a bunch of superheroes talk about it. Literally, that's all they're doing is talking about it. There's nothing interesting about this. I can't recommend this title. I can't. This is a waste of paper. Like, and what's going to happen? Like, I don't even know what's going to happen here. Like, where's this headed toward? I'm so disappointed in this. And we're learning nothing about the Justice League, nothing about any Legion of Superheroes, nothing about the future. We don't even have character work. We learn nothing about the Great Darkness. We just got a bunch of superfluous dialogue. This is, I hate to say this, but this is a huge miss for me. I can't recommend this to anybody, and I don't see this going anywhere. I don't see the reason to pick this up. We know it's a pointless title to get. Also, no one's reading it. No one's talking about it. And I'm sorry, but somebody tell me in the chat, or somebody tell me in the comments below, what are we supposed to look forward to? What's the big bad here? I don't get it. Why does this comic exist other than to just, I don't know, hoping that just these two teams are supposed to get people to buy it? This is you know, I hate to say it, but when you got Naomi and Black Adam, you know, again, contributing superfluous dialogue to this, and Batman, I mean, nothing is happening here. Nothing is happening. And the Gold Lantern, he's blind. He's visually blind. So what? That was the big revelation last issue. That was the big revelation. We got the origin of the Gold Lantern. Oh, he's visually blind. So what? So, I mean, it's depressing enough that in the future there's no Gold Lanterns. Instead, we have this visually blind one person who's a Gold Lantern, and there's no other lanterns. Is that supposed to be exciting, DC? Are you glad you brought Bendis over from Marvel for that? Thanks. And yet you aged up. I mean, yet another reason. I'm baffled by this. What are we supposed to find interesting? Leviathan, failure. Aging up John Kent, failure. Gold Lantern, failure. Show me something to get excited about in this title. That's what this was supposed to be. So far, this is a goose egg for me. And I'm sorry to say. I don't know. Tell me something, Jace, to get excited about in this series.
I can't. I don't understand it either. I mean, I don't dislike it as much as you. It's to me, it's sort of innocuous. You know, it's not it's not impactful or important enough to say, oh, it's ruining Dark Crisis, or it's ruining Justice League or Legion of Superheroes, whatever. I just don't care. Like I said, I never was a fan of Bendis's Legion version. So yeah, it just doesn't matter. Like when I think back to, I mean, granted, it's not Legion, it's not Justice League crossing over with Legion of Superheroes, but did you ever read the Jeff Johns Superman and Legion of Superheroes when it was just Superman that crossed over?
Sure.
Oh my God, that's one of my favorite. That has one of my, awesome. if not my favorite, one of my favorite Superman moments of all time. In fact, that is part of a wallpaper I created for my desktop on my computer. That moment where he almost hits the ground and gets his powers back and what have you. Like, that is so great. So when you hear, oh, Justice League's going to cross over with Legion of Superheroes, you get excited. And then we get this. And it's not that it's, like I said, offensive or horribly bad or anything. It's just, it's so meh because nothing happens. And because we don't know really what's going on. Bendis hasn't laid it out for us. there's no stakes, there's no consequences. I don't know why I'm supposed to care. Now at the end, it may be that he pulls it all together, and then at the end I go, okay, well that made sense. That wasn't as bad as I thought. But who wants to read a story where you invest time in it, and then at the end it may or may not be good? Like, if you have something interesting, put it at the beginning, hook me in, because from the beginning I've been like, I'm not sure what's going on. I don't really care much for the art or the color. So what reason, like you said, what reason, give us a reason to care about this book. And unfortunately I don't have one. So anyway, let's move on. Here's another book that didn't work for me, and your mileage may vary, because I guess for some people this could be a whole heck of a lot of fun, but for me, it's just not for me. And it's the Jurassic League. It's Daniel Warren Johnson and Juan Gedeon. They're credited as presenting the Jurassic League. It's written by both of them. Art is by Juan Gedeon. Colors are by Mike Spicer. Letters are by Farron Delgado. To me, the best part about this book is the names of the locations. The outskirts of Growltham City. Instead of Gotham, it's Growltham.
Yeah.
And then we see later we see Metropolis, because they're all dinosaurs. And we've got Black Mantosaurus, and Superman is Supersaurus. The Wonder Dawn, because she's like a pterodon, I guess, for Wonder Woman. That doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well. And the what was it? The Joker Zerd instead of lizard.
Yeah, Joker Zerd. Yeah.
That doesn't quite roll off the tongue either. But yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be excited about this. Justice League flipped over into a prehistoric version, but yeah, this is not for me. Although I will say there's a Walt Simonson cover, and if I do buy an issue of this, which I'm not planning on, I would probably grab the Walt Simonson because it's Walt Simonson. But I don't know. This seems like maybe it's right up your alley, Rocky. Did you enjoy it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why you would say it's right up my alley, but maybe it's because I want to give a shout out to Daniel Warren Johnson's Wonder Woman Dead Earth.
Yeah,
his art's fantastic.
And
the art in Wonder Woman Dead Earth is fantastic. But for the life of me, why Daniel Warren Johnson is not the main artist on this? He's just the writer. That just blows me away. No disrespect to the actual artist on this title, who is Gideon. I mean, his art is very, very similar to Daniel Warren Johnson. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as good as Daniel Warren Johnson. It's sort of like Adrian Mello trying to copy Joelle Jones in the pages of Wonder Girl. It's just, duplicated but not imitated, or imitated but not duplicated. You know the phrase. But in any event, I don't. Unfortunately, this is a comic book that I would expect to see in Mad Magazine. To be honest, we're all out of ideas for the mainstream lines, so why don't we just make everybody a dinosaur and change the name of their cities and make everybody sound like a dinosaur? Yeah, I'm sure the grade 1 class will love that. That's what this feels like to me. There's nothing about this story that is different. This is one-dimensional storytelling, which I would expect. It's about dinosaurs, right? Why does this another thing, the Jurassic League, I guess, are you hoping to attract the Jurassic World crowd after they go and watch the Jurassic dinosaur movie? They're going to run to their comic shop to buy the Jurassic League? I don't get it. Look, I know that we're supposed to have fun with this. And yes, this I guess this is a fun comic, I guess. But what's really odd about this is a dinosaur. There's a planet called Krypton, or it's probably Kryptonosaurus or something, and it sends a dinosaur Kal-El to Earth. I mean, and then I guess that's kind of cute. And we got a Batman dinosaur and a Wonder Woman dinosaur and a Superman dinosaur and an Aquaman dinosaur. And it's kind of funny and cute until they start biting limbs off. And there's gross violence. And again, as an adult, sure, I can have fun with this. Let's make no mistake. This is a violent comic book. You can have fun with it. I joke about this a lot, but I do drink occasionally when I read comics. This is a comic that I absolutely want to drink while I'm reading, because I'll have a great time sipping my whiskey, sipping an old fashioned while reading a dinosaur comic. this is it. This is the one I want to read. But I got to be brutally honest here. Of all the selection you have for DC Comics, I just Jurassic League is I'm a little bit lost because this is not sophisticated storytelling. I mean, this really isn't. I mean, this is going to be the formative story, I'm guessing, of how these dinosaurs who are analogs of Justice League characters come together to fight a legion of doomed dinosaurs. I'm guessing, right? And that's all well and good, but what a very odd, eclectic choice for a story. But look, I'm not gonna. The story itself, it's the art is visceral. It's colorful. I love the colors. They pop off the page. There's blood. There's guts. The violence. The actual fight choreography as the Batasaurus fights the Jokersaurus. I mean, is actually really good. Supersaurus and the fact of Wonder Woman's dinosaur analog there with the imagery of her looking at Ares, an Ares dinosaur that she killed and that he presumably might come back to life at some point. There's clearly a mythology here that writer Daniel Warren Johnson is building upon. So I don't want to take away from that. I really don't. I'm so taken aback by this choice. I love Daniel Warren Johnson's Wonder Woman Dead Earth. I wanted him to write the actual characters him to write other DC characters with his eclectic, visceral, very stylistic, artistic sensibilities. I wanted that. I didn't want it to be dinosaurs. But having said that, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't kind of curiously intrigued in terms of where this might be going, because maybe it's going to be kind of cool, because I love the art, but it's not Daniel Warren's art, but it's Gideon's very similar style to Daniel Warren Johnson. It does captivate me, and the colors are really great. I'm not sure, is it the same artist doing the coloring? Is Gideon doing the coloring, or that's Spicer?
Yeah, Mike Spicer does the colors.
Yeah, art by Joan Gideon, and it doesn't say anything about colors by Mike Spicer. Yeah, so look, I'm intrigued by it, but I can't help but thinking that this is sort of these are guys sitting around a table getting drunk saying, hey, why don't we do a Justice League book with dinosaurs? And hey, DC's actually paying us to do this because there's a merger and they don't know what they just approved. I mean, that's what I feel happened. but hey, I might even pick this up just for shits and giggles, because but I don't know, man. It's different, but I don't even know.
Yeah, it feels like this would be aimed at like a 10-year-old boy, right? Like,
yeah,
this could be a whole heck of a lot of fun for somebody like that. But you're right. Then when you actually read it, it's brutally violent, which you would expect from a Daniel Warren Johnson comic. So yeah. I'm not sure. It's like they tried to have their cake and eat it too, and they didn't. They could have made it, a more sophisticated story, and it would have appealed to an older audience, I think. Even though they're dinosaurs, it could have been, don't lean so far into don't make the art quite so cartoony, make it a little more detailed, and make it, it doesn't have to be dinosaurs, lizard people kind of thing, and it would be a little more mature and a little more, of a complicated story and not so simplistic, and it would appeal to an older audience. Or you dial down on the blood and guts, and you have a great entry point to bring kids in. It's not either. So yeah, I'm struggling. It's like, okay, this is for specifically for 14-year-olds whose parents are okay with them reading super violent stuff, and that's it. So I question the decision, but anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Batman Urban Legends number 15. 4 stories here. Batman and Zatanna, Bound to Our Will, part 5 of 6, which is written by Vita Ayala. Niccolo Sameggia is the artist. Nick Filardi on colors. Steve Wands on letters. There's a one-shot Batman and Plastic Man story called Bending the Rules, written by Joey Esposito. Jason Howard does the art and colors. Pat Brosso on letters. Second part of 3 for Birds of Prey in Memory Lane, written by Shea Grayson. Serge Acuna does the art. Yvonne Placencia on colors. Josh Reed on letters. And Ace the Bat Hound in Hounded, part 5 of 6, written by Mark Russell. Carl Mostert is the artist. Trish Mulvihill on colors. Steve Wands on letters. I'm just going to go through these super fast. This Batman Zatanna story by Vita Ayala, the strength of it continues to be the relationship that Vita Ayala is giving Batman and Zatanna. Hints of this possible romance. I love the voice that they are giving to both Bruce Wayne and to Zatanna, in a way, kind of this star-crossed relationship, which I think is really interesting because I've never been a fan of the Batman Selina Kyle or Bruce Wayne Selina Kyle romance. It doesn't work for me. I much rather see Batman Zatanna. I guess the kids would say I ship them. Um, so this is interesting. I like what Vita is doing. I think they are a really talented writer, and I'd love to see them do more main stuff in the DCU. Plus, just to add to the romantic relationship triangle here, we've got John Constantine, who actually has had a romantic relationship with Zatanna in the past, and so that's pretty interesting. If I have any nitpick about the story, it doesn't feel like it needed 6 parts, because this one moved along really, really slow, and I really feel like we could have finished up already by now. But again, it's a minor nitpick. I am enjoying the story, so I don't mind that it's taking its time. The Nicola Sameja art, it's okay. It's a little stylized, not my favorite style, but it's working for the story, especially because it's kind of fluid, and that type of art style usually works for magical stories. The Batman Plastic Man story was just kind of meh. A theme we've seen many times. Plastic Man, you may or may not know, used to be a villain. Eel O'Brien, he started out as. He teams up with Batman to Batman's chagrin, because Batman's chasing this guy who agreed to testify against a mob boss. Happens to be somebody that Plastic Man knows, but the guy's scared, and so he runs away. And Plastic Man's trying to convince Batman, hey, not every villain or not every criminal's a coward. Give him a chance. Blah blah blah. It felt very, very heavy-handed, so didn't. It was just okay. Wasn't bad. Wasn't great. The art was decent. The Memory Lane story, I'm really enjoying this version of the Birds of Prey. They certainly don't get along. We're talking about Ghost and Talia and Katana and Miracle Molly. They're such 4 different personalities all shoved together for this mission. They all have different values and different ways of getting the job done. Like it makes for a really interesting dynamic, and I'd like to read more of it. That being said, it does feel like the pacing is a little hodgepodge, probably because they're cramming it into only 3 parts, which makes for breakneck pacing, and it makes the story feel a little bit choppy. But I am enjoying it, and the Serge Acuna art is really strong. And then the final story, the Carl Mostert story, man, he's or Mark Russell story, I guess, with Mostert art. He's really doing a lot in only 6 issues. Yes, it's all having to do with Ace the Bat Hound and his animal companions, but Mark Russell's really exploring a lot of different big ideas in this story. This one having to do with loyalty, and we see that both amongst the Batman villains who are bidding on Batman with the Joker there and whatnot, and the loyalty of the animals. And in a way, Mark Russell's almost saying, look, these animals are more loyal and have more sympathy and empathy toward each other than these Bat villains do. I found that to be really interesting, and the Mostert art is really, really strong. So probably the best one of the best Batman Urban Legends stories we've had throughout. It's up there in my top 3 with the Grifter story we got right at the beginning and the Red Hood story that we got. Red Hood being by Zdarsky and the Grifter story by Matthew Rosenberg. This Mark Russell stories were right up there. But not to sell the Birds of Prey story short, because that's a really strong one too. But anyway, Rocky, what are your thoughts on these stories?
Well, my favorite story is the Bear Witness one, part 5 of 6, the Mark Russell one, with this, which is actually a formative. It's actually it's like Batman, or it's like Bat Hound or Ace the Bat Hound year 1. It's like that's what it feels like to me. It's like it's the origin story of Ace, and that's what I think it's very well done. I do think it's a little bit. I think it's probably too long. It's too decompressed. 6 parts. I don't think it needs to be that long, but it's well done. The Bear Witness story ends with Batman ultimately having to face off against one of the bears, um, uh, one of the animals. But it's an animal based. The actual the to view one of Batman's adventures almost through the eyes of the animals that are involved in the adventures. I thought Mark Russell did a good has done a good job of that. It's not over yet. It's only part 5 or 6 here. I thought that was very well done, and that is my favorite. Now, I have mixed feelings about the Lady Shiva. I love the idea of Birds of Prey consisting of Lady Shiva, Katana, Miracle Molly, and this other character who I forget. I mean, I think that it's got potential. It does feel like they're thrown together. It doesn't. I still don't buy the reason why they're. It's still not justified enough to me why Lady Shiva would ever want to work with Katana. That's still not clear to me, even after reading this chapter. I think that there's some wonkiness. I think these characters were thrown together because I actually think that probably some writers were drinking and they lost a bet and they said, well, throw these characters together and let's make a story out of it. And somebody says, you can't do that. And the other one said, well, just hold my beer. And then we got this story out of it. And that's what we're getting. But I'm glad because I love Lady Shiva. I think they're missing her character a little bit here. I think she's more mysterious and she's not quite as foolish as she's being portrayed here. But I like the drama between Lady Shiva and Katana. I like that tension. They need to build on that. And so I'm going with it. I like Miracle Molly as a character. I think these characters have potential. I think that'll be better explored through, dare I say, maybe just a different approach to the writing, to be very honest. As far as the Plastic Man story, it was meh. It was all right. I'm not going to say much about it. I will say that with respect to the Vita Ayala story with Batman and Zatanna, I think I liked it at first. I think it's gone a little bit of awry. The fact that Katana, apparently Zatanna and Batman have a word called and the word is reviver. They have this word where they say to each other, and the minute they say this word, they're gonna they need to help each other if they say this word to each other based upon their younger relationship. And Batman had loved Zatanna at one point, and Zatanna maybe had loved him, and they both, for whatever reason, they never communicated their feelings adequately enough. I can buy all that I can buy that with Batman's character. What I can't buy with Batman's character is that everybody knows that if you want Batman's help, you just have to ask for it. You don't need a secret word. I mean, you don't need to have sexual feelings to Batman or get him aroused to get him to help you. That's not what he does.
You don't need to be hot and drawn by Adam Hughes.
Exactly. That whole thing just never. That's Vita Ayala not understanding Batman. To be quite blunt, that never made sense. It would have made more sense had she tied it into more of the magical elements, or the word was tied into the actual plot itself, as opposed to this made up character, which is nonsense that I don't buy. So it's fallen short for me. So it's lost me. Plus it's dragged on. It's not over yet. It's too long. The strong points of Vita Ayala's story is with John Constantine and Batman and Zatanna. Those are strong points, but it's lost its focus now, and it's kind of gone awry. And just as a general criticism of the Batman Urban Legends is that a lot of these stories, if you're not a fan of one of the stories, you're forced to buy an extra expensive comic book that has a bunch of most stories. It feels like an anthology all the time. And most of the time, the vast majority of the stories in it, I'm not a fan of, but I got to buy it for just one story. And so I don't end up buying it at all. And now maybe I will be inclined to buy it because I'm a collector and I'm a completionist. But I fear that a lot of people, well, I can look at the sales, which we don't know what the sales are, but I really fear that this tactic of throwing all these very long 26, 25-page stories, cramming it into Batman Urban Legends that are untested stories, I don't know. I don't think it's working. I question whether or not it's working for DC. I suspect it isn't, but I stand to be corrected on that. I hope I'm wrong. I want comics to succeed, especially DC Comics, but I question it sometimes. But in any event, It is what it is.
Yeah, so I do as well. But here's the thing: like I personally have talked a lot of times in the past. Why doesn't American comics ever embrace the anthology, model like Asian comics do, where you get one 4 different stories in one volume and whatever. Yeah, I mean, so I can't have it both ways. Either they do it and it works, they do it or it doesn't work, or they don't do it at all. Those are kind of the options. And so even though there are going to be times where, yeah, maybe like uh, knowing these stories, there's not none of these stories that I'm enjoying enough that I would be buying this. Uh, that's just how it is. But in the beginning, we had 2 amazing stories, and I thought that the Outsiders one was pretty solid as well. So 3 out of the 4 were really really good, and I was buying it. So yeah, I guess it's going to be one of those things where maybe the sales go up and down a little bit based on what stories are being written there. Um, I think if DC Smart, what they would do is they would use this to introduce new characters, because then you're going to have the spec guys that are already buying it, right? So if stories like James Tynan's um, what was it called, Fear State?
Yeah.
I don't know, the one before that, the Joker War, where he introduced all
Right.
where he introduced the Clown Hunter and uh, Ghostmaker and Punchline and all that. Like, could you imagine if that was in this, what the sales,
Yeah.
So I imagine you probably would have had, if the other stories sucked, people would have been complaining, but you could have done it where they all tied into Joker War. So anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on. Batgirl's number 6, written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, Jorge Corona on art, Sarah Stern on colors, Becca Carey on letters. One Way or Another, part 6 of 6. This brings the first arc of Batgirls to a close. What do you think, Rock?
Uh, well, uh, yeah, I guess it ended decent enough. It ended decent enough. I I stand by my earlier comments in the previous five issues that I mean, whether we like it or not, this is the new characterization of Spoiler and Cassandra Kane, Batgirl. I'm not a fan of either of these interpretations of these characters. These are diametrically different characters than what we've come to know. Contrary to what has been said by certain commentators online, this is not my Cassandra Kane. It's not even the Spoiler that I know, but I guess she's Batgirl. They're all Batgirls now. I'm not a big fan of this iteration of the characters. But having said that, is the story okay? Is the art does the art fit the story? Sure. It's a story on the surface. It seems to be artistically, it looks like it's written for kids. It's drawn for children, and then yet when you get into the storyline, we're dealing with very adult-like storylines. Here in this final issue, we have Charles Dante, the Spellbinder, who was the one-time boyfriend at one point, or quasi undefined relationship with Barbara Gordon, boyfriend of Barbara Gordon. He is discovered, and Barbara Gordon basically takes him out. He basically is someone who was he was manipulating or sort of working with Tudor in order to manipulate the minds of people that would support his art, and then he would send them art, and then through fear gas combined through his art would sort of manipulate and try to control minds of various people in Gotham, and that was through fear state and through a form of Scarecrow's fear toxin. That's what Charles Dante was doing, and ultimately he is stopped here by the Batgirls. And there's there, full credit here to artist Jose Corona. I think there's a lot of great action scenes here. A lot of great action scenes. You've noted before about the sort of the ink blots on the page. It doesn't bother me so much. I know that you're more critical of that, but I think I think that the colors pop off the page. Artistically, I do think that this is a style. This is a style that fits and it works. And if you don't like the style, you don't like the style. But I think that I can see this having an audience. I can see this having an audience. I actually think that the characterizations of Batgirl and Stephanie Brown, they have grown on me, even though I'm not a fan of it. The fact is that I can. It was consistent throughout from issues 1 through 6 here. and I, you know, it's okay. It's okay. Again, I'm not I would rather I would rather have an older Cassandra Kane that was more mature than this, that was struggling with her identity, struggling maybe with learning the language, being more maybe closer on the autistic side, learning, being in too drowned in the language of motion, who's struggling with her social skills, as opposed to this Batgirl, this Cassandra Kane, who is, uh, seems to be flippant, seems to be like a really good friend, seems to be just like another just like another bat martial artist, nothing special about her at all. She's just a really good fighter. Dealing with Stephanie Brown, who's got an inferiority complex, who wants to learn how to fight better and be a good fighter as her fellow Batgirl. Um, this doesn't really this doesn't line up. I don't know why Barbara Gordon's here. Barbara Gordon is apparently living in two places at once. She's living in a shithole apartment in Gotham with two down and out Batgirls, and then she's also apparently living with a billionaire, Dick Grayson, in Bloodhaven, and presumably Nightwing issue 100. Everyone's talking about that being a wedding between Barbara Gordon and Nightwing. I wonder how she's going to break the news to these two Batgirls. But I I be facetious here, but I I think this is an interesting experiment that I hope is not built upon. I I is this isn't a limited series. I would prefer it to be that. I wish this would end. I'd rather have this end. Uh, I don't think the sales are very high on this, but hey, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But overall, this was adequate. It was mediocre. It was a nice, maybe an interesting experiment, but I'm, I've not been physically buying this myself. I stopped at issue 2 because it's not my cup of tea. But maybe it has an audience. It's clearly not written for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And here's the thing: I don't know that it knows what it wants to be. I mean, I actually talked to some of the creators on the book recently, and I talked about Jorge Corona's art and how it gives the impression of being for kids, but like you said, these are adult themes, and that's been a challenge. So I don't know. I think this is was just a mistake in choosing the creative team, putting Jorge Corona on this book. And I get trying to make the art more gritty and visceral by using that ink spatter, but it still looks like juvenile art. That's not to say it's bad art, because that art worked really well on Middle West. It worked really well on the Me You Love in the Dark. So I don't know. The story itself feels like it wants to be juvenile, but it's just like this is like a story that has multiple personality disorder, or DID, I guess it's called now, dissociative identity disorder. Doesn't know what it wants to be. Doesn't want to be this mature Batgirl book. Doesn't want to be a book for kids. Doesn't want to be, what does it want to be? And let's take two established other Batgirls, Cassandra Kane and Stephanie Brown, and sort of de-age them and have them act younger and less experienced and less mature than they ever have. Like, I'd rather they would have brought in new characters, or you could have brought in one new character and you could have brought in Bluebird, or somebody else, because the Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Kane act like 11 or 12-year-olds here.
Yeah.
That's their characterization.
And that failure,
they're old enough to drive.
Yeah, and that failure is something that should have been recognized before, right at the concept stage. Like the minute you saw, like, I mean, they should have known this. And this is my frustration with, it's part of a larger topic that I don't want to digress, but it just feels like, these are the types of decision making that should not be taking place in a professional organization that is familiar with the continuity of characters. This was a mistake from concept, and I'm sorry, but it just was. And if you want to proceed with a series like this, it should be an Elseworlds tale, or a limited series, or a DC animated series, or something, but not in the mainstream universe.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, Rocky. I don't know that this was a failure of concept, because I think the concept is solid. Batgirl mentoring two other young girls. The mistake is in the casting, if you will. Choosing Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Kane, that's what doesn't work. The concept, I think, is solid. Let's take Batgirl, let's take Barbara Gordon, let's take her out of the costume, let's put her back in her Oracle persona and have her mentor a couple of young girls that are inspired by Batgirl. I mean, let's take some younger girls that are inspired by Batgirl Barbara Gordon, that are inspired by Stephanie Brown Batgirl, that are inspired by Cassandra Kane Batgirl. like those different iterations. Take young girls, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls. I think there's a lot of interesting story ideas there, but you can't do it with a 20. And in my mind, Cassandra Cain's around 24 and Stephanie Brown's around 16, 17. They don't act that age here. So I think you needed new characters, you needed young girls, and make this a kid's book, or a book aimed more at a younger audience. I think that works. I think as a concept that works. So
Yeah,
I think as
it's
a
a good point.
concept, yeah, maybe not a failure of concept, but it's just a failure in casting. You just picked the wrong characters. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And the other thing too is that, I mean, and this is bearing in mind that when they know that Barbara Gordon, when they know that they perhaps want to do something with Barbara Gordon in the pages of Nightwing, it's very hard to reconcile, her running back and forth between Bloodhaven and
and
Gotham in my mind. But I guess you can stretch it to that effect. But it was just, to me, there was just two. It's another example of DC having two very different conceptions of a character and trying to shoehorn them in under the guise of, oh, it's an omniverse, everything matters. And I don't know. This feels like a totally different Barbara Gordon to me than the one we're seeing in Nightwing. And that's probably magnified because of the artistic difference, I admit, which is maybe a little bit unfair because there's different styles of art. But I personally am a continuity buff. That's my bias. I like a little bit more consistency on the between
yeah,
storyline.
that doesn't bother me. I mean, there were any number of decades where Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman were in the pages of Justice League, sometimes off planet, and they were still in their regular books. So that one doesn't bug me that much. So anyway, moving on, we have Naomi season 2, number 3. This is from writers Brian Michael Bendis and David F. Walker. Jamal Campbell does the art. Wes Abbott on letters. It's clear in this season 2 that Bendis is really leaning into the family dynamic of Naomi, how young and inexperienced she is. I'll go back to something Rocky and I said at the very beginning of this volume 2. As much as I'm enjoying it, the problem is it took so long to come out, right? Naomi has been around for so long, and in the pages of Justice League, it seems like she's so far beyond where she is here. Part of the dynamic and struggle between her and her parents, especially her and her father, is how inexperienced she is, how she's putting herself in danger, blah, blah, blah. This is a conversation that should have happened months and months ago. And I get it. This, in terms of continuity, this is supposed to take place, right on the heels of volume 1. But in publishing time, obviously it makes it an issue. So setting that aside, I do enjoy the characterization. It does feel somewhat realistic in terms of, even though her father is a Thanagarian, and has, been in space and is trained for battle and whatnot, he does have fears that his young daughter, who is also not of this world, could be hurt in battle. So I do enjoy the characterization. I enjoy the story. It does seem like Naomi's sort of earning her stripes, earning her way into the Justice League. But again, this all should have happened before she ever got into the Justice League. Though just really a failure of timing, which I'm sure it had to do with everybody's schedule, that this took so long to come out after the first issue. But the art by Jamal Campbell is absolutely fantastic, as his art tends to be, especially him doing his own color work, a lot of oranges and pinks and bright blues. So that's all working for me on a lot of levels. And I love the cliffhanger ending. We know in the first volume that Naomi befriended another Thanagarian, D, who actually was sent to retrieve her father and instead chose to make a life on Earth as well. He shows back up here at the end, clearly having been through the ringer, because she wasn't even sure where he had disappeared to. So a bit of a cliffhanger ending, and it works because there's a lot of times where Bendis doesn't give us enough in the writing to care when there's a cliffhanger ending. But again, I'll credit his writing partner, David F. Walker, for probably helping Bendis not to fall into some of his bad habits that he falls into. And I don't know what it is about working on DC properties where he falls into those bad habits, because when he did Joy Operation over at Dark Horse, that was absolutely fantastic. So I know he still has it in him. But I don't know. Some of these DC stories, I feel like sometimes it feels like, honestly, there's pages missing. I don't feel like that with Naomi. I'm really enjoying it. So what'd you think?
Well, I will give Bendis a shout out for Joy Operations. I'm behind in my review. I've reviewed issues, I believe issues 1 through 3, and if issue 4's come out, I haven't reviewed it yet. I'm a little behind on my comics, but I want to give him a shout out for that. I find I remain baffled by his work on Naomi here, because I'm not enjoying this Naomi as much as you are, and I think I've identified exactly why. This feels like he's writing for a screenplay, not a comic book. The amount of the amount of these scenes here that are taking place and throughout issue 2, it's it's just wasted scenes that don't serve a narrative. Why is Hawkgirl Kendra showing up at her parents' place? What was the point of that? It served no narrative purpose. In fact, and when it does, she's like Bendis. First of all, he gets it wrong that Kendra's Thanagarian in the first place, but let's go with that because Bendis's writing, he thinks she's Thanagarian. Okay, fine, let's go with that. I can't believe that there isn't more harsh words between Kendra and her and Naomi's father, who's Ranian. These are lifelong enemies. Uh, the dialogue, it didn't stand up to scrutiny. It didn't. It was just, these were pointless scenes that, and this type of pointless scene, when you watch, my wife my wife watches a lot of Young and the Restless, and there's always pointless scenes where there's 90% of a soap opera is totally useless scenes where they will talk about what they ate for lunch. Pointless scenes, but you need to drag it out because it's a soap opera. It's literally a soap opera. You don't do that when you're paying money for a comic book. I want to know what the substance is here. These pointless exchanges of dialogue between the parents talking about their daughter. This isn't this is not Naomi. This is not CW Naomi. Okay? I don't need to know what the parents think of Naomi. Get to the plot already. I mean, I know Naomi feels new. I know she's just getting into her powers. That's been established ad nauseum already. Get her to fighting Zimbardo already, or get her off to the next world already. Move this plot forward already. This is unbelievable. Her discussion with Cyborg, she's starstruck by Cyborg. I mean, come on, we've been through this already. I'm so, I suppose in fairness, if you're somebody who's been, if anybody who picked up Naomi Volume 1 and was actually interested in Naomi Volume 1, which I can understand because it was reasonably good, and now you're picking up Volume 2 and you've never read Naomi at all, then maybe I can kind of see this. Maybe. But this is still ploddingly slow. And this to me is, I'm deeply dissatisfied by this. This is obscenely slow. We already know we're at issue. This is issue 3. We're halfway through this, and she knows nothing about her homeworld. She knows nothing more about her homeworld than ever before. She knows there's actually been nothing substantive that has actually happened in 3 issues. So what more does she know about her homeworld? Has she gone to her own homeworld yet? No, she's not even there yet. She's worried about D. Why is she worried about D? He's back at the end of this issue. So we're going to have issues 4, 5, and 6. And what can possibly happen in 3 issues? Bendis has proven that he does not know how to move a story. And bear in mind, he's had 2 years. And I know you can't blame him because it's all DC shenanigans. But what's his excuse now? He's got 6 issues and this is plotting. I'm sorry, but the art's fantastic, but the art can't save a bad story. And this to me is just, this is unbelievable.
You said I didn't like it as much as you. You didn't say you hated it. This is obscene. What? You're using
I'm just saying. But no. But this is fine. But this is like the art's fine, sure. But where's the story here? Give us something.
The whole point. The whole point of the story is she's only had these powers for a couple of weeks. This is all still new. This is her and her parents coming to terms with her gaining these powers. That's the whole point of the story.
How long? I mean,
she's had the power. If you read the book, she says it's, she's talking to her friends under the bleachers at school. It's only been a couple weeks that she's had these powers. This is realistic in terms of, if you only had these powers for a couple weeks and you're disappearing from your home at night, your parents are going to be freaked out. This reads very realistic to me. And it's about establishing who this teenage superhero is and establishing the angst and the drama and everything that goes along with the fact that she's got a crazy life. You said it yourself. She has a Iranian as a father. She comes from a different world. She's got a best friend that's a Thanagarian. She's only had the powers for a couple of weeks. She's coming to terms with what her limits are. She says those words, those exact words, in this issue as well. So your problem, a lot of what you're complaining about, you're like, we've seen this. It goes back to what I said before. Yeah, we've seen it in all the other issues of her that have already come out in Justice League and other crossover stuff. All that takes place after this. That's the problem. This should have come out. Like, this shouldn't even be Naomi season 2. This should still be Naomi season 1, issue number 9, because it should have just kept coming out. It never should have stopped after the 6 issues. That's my point. That's where it doesn't work. Okay,
I'm not sure. Does that all her adventures? This took place before that. I thought this took place after that. That was not clear to me.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the mistake that DC made. And again, I don't know if it's Jamal Campbell's schedule or Bendis' schedule or David Walker's schedule, but this happens. Like issue 1 of this takes place just basically immediately after issue 6 of season 1. This is before she's in the Justice League, before she's joined up and traveled to her home world.
Well, I will absolutely concede that if that's the case and this came out on time, I would probably maybe feel a little bit more forgiving about it, no question. And nonetheless, this is still it's a victim of the reality of its circumstance, and being told that still doesn't ameliorate my feelings that this is something that I'm just I'm sorry, but this is just, I find this boring. I find this really just plain boring to me. And this is not something that I've, and again, we're still 3 issues in and nothing happens. That's demonstrably proven. There's 3 issues in. And, I mean, yeah, it's new, but that's not an excuse for not having, you can still move the plot forward. I don't like this character based. I don't like this character based, and it's not even character. It's dialogue ridden. I find it too dialogue heavy. I find it drowned in characters.
What you're saying is you're looking for some action. You're looking for a comic
or even
where
information,
goes and
even
uses
information.
Her powers and what I'm saying is this is a story about Naomi coming to terms. Naomi and her parents coming to terms with who they are now, with this new reality that they're faced with, and coming to terms with how it's changed the dynamic of their relationship. This is not a comic that says we're going to see Naomi go to her homeworld and defeat the person that killed her parents. This isn't a comic where we're going to see Naomi, going and fighting against supervillains. That's not the point of this story. The point of the story is to examine the relationship between Naomi and her parents now that she has these powers, and to examine the relationship that Naomi has with herself now that she has these powers. So again, I go back to this needed to be done, whatever, like 2 years, like so the first Naomi came out before the pandemic even happened, because I remember getting my copy of number 1 signed by David Walker at WonderCon in 2019. So this needed to come out 3 years ago. Now I get it that might, in terms of interpersonal, this is an interpersonal story. This is a story about family dynamics. That might not be a story you're interested in. You may find that boring, and that's 100% valid. Doesn't make it a bad story. It just makes it a story that you don't care about.
Yeah. I suppose if I'm going to throw this a bone, I suppose it's because I already know that nothing, she's not even going to make it remotely to the other world by issue 6. No. That's not going to happen. And it's going to be another, volume 3 is going to come out. And by the end of 6 issues of volume 3, she's still not going to make it onto the homeworld. So this is still going to drag on and on and on and on and on. And unfortunately, I'm going by just Bendis's history on this, on other titles. So I should know better. I mean, we got countless evidence of that, from Leviathan to his Avengers to everything. So I guess that's just the way it is. But I just really wish that there was a little bit more. This does feel that this needs more action.
It's a waste of a character that's got great potential. We've talked about this before. how if Naomi had come out every month for the last 3 years, think about what an incredible character where she could be right now if we had 36 issues of Naomi.
Sure. Potentially.
She
Yeah.
would have. She guarantees she would have got to her world and fought Zimbadu by then. So
well, I just maybe I'm going to say maybe, and I hate to be cynical, but Bendis had
maybe I should put it this
36
way.
issues
Maybe
of
I should,
Superman, and I know where that went. So
well, hold on. I should have also said, okay, if we had Naomi coming out every month for the last 3 years, ever since she debuted, Bendis wouldn't be writing it because he couldn't have kept that schedule. So
yeah,
she would be in the hands of another writer, maybe just David Walker. So that's the caveat. It wouldn't be Bendis writing it. We'd be much further along. Anyway, let's move along. We got a couple of other issues to talk about here. Suicide Squad, Get Joker, Book 3. I feel like it's been a long time since we had Book 2 of this. Speaking of delays, but anyway, it's written by Brian Azzarello. Alex Maleev is the artist. Matt Howarth on colors. Jared K. Fletcher on letters. I had to go back and flip through issue 2. It'd been so long I didn't really remember. Ultimately, I'm going to say I'm pretty disappointed in this issue. I talked about issue 1 maybe being one of my favorite comics of all time because Amanda Waller got killed. Well, come to find out in this issue, we find out she's not dead at all. In fact, she's well enough to be talking on the phone to Red Hood. I hate this comic. I hate that Amanda Waller is still alive. Even in a Black Label book, we can't kill her. Come on, man. And also whether or not Joker dies at all in the end is completely left to the reader's discretion, which I think is a bit of a cop-out. So is this a violent book? Yes. Is there a ton of action? Yes. Does it look like Alex Maleev art? Yes. Is that a good thing? Your mileage may vary. I'm not a fan. So ultimately, yeah, this didn't end in a satisfying way for me. But I do appreciate Azzarello getting down and dirty with the Suicide Squad and giving us a Black Label book with a high body count. So what do you think?
I enjoyed it more than you did. This very clearly is out of continuity. This is clearly a tale somewhere out there in the DC Omniverse, and I enjoyed it for what it was, for what it's trying to say. I actually enjoyed. I like the ending. My own interpretation of the ending, even though it's left, all you hear is a gunshot. But I choose to believe that the Joker has been shot by Jason Todd, and that is in fact dead. If one accepts my interpretation of the ending, I can see people being pissed off because Batman isn't even in this comic. How could Jason Todd be the one to kill the Joker? But I mean, let's face it. Isn't that appropriate? The Joker killed Jason Todd. Jason Todd ends this one. He gets his comeuppance and he takes out the Joker. And I love the characterization of Harley Quinn here. The character work here, I think Brian Azzarello did a really good job in the character work here. A lot of people gave Brian Azzarello a hard time on that first issue because of some comments Wild Dog made about domestic terrorism and sounding too much like a domestic white male terrorist and all this nonsense. It was true to form. I love Wild Dog here is one of my favorite characters. I mean, he's awesome. The rapport between Wild Dog here and Jason Todd, I think is incredible. I love it. There's action. There's action and violence. I mean, the bottom line here is that the Joker has basically taken over the bombs that are in the Suicide Squad's head, and upon Amanda Waller being killed, there's a new guy that takes over the Task Force X, and once he finds out through Jason Todd that they're compromised because the Joker has the button that can blow their heads off, he sends the new Suicide Squad in to take out the old Suicide Squad. So you got two Suicide Squads facing off against each other. And while that's going on and people are getting killed, Jason Todd and Harley Quinn and Wild Dog, who ultimately end up being the final three that ultimately end up surviving, they have to figure out how not only are they going to be able to escape, but they decide that, they're going to be taken out. They want to take out the Joker as well. And so you start off at the beginning. I mean, basically the second issue took place pretty much in a strip bar of all things. I mean, this is Brian Azzarello at his best, or if you're not an Azzarello fan, you could say at his worst. Mileage is going to vary on that. I'm an Azzarello fan. Believe it or not, Brian Azzarello wrote one of my favorite Wonder Woman runs, 36 issues on Wonder Woman, and I love that. I got two absolute editions of Wonder Woman, Brian Azzarello. I mean, kudos to Brian Azzarello, who has Wonder Woman actually call another woman a bitch. You know, thank you, Brian Azzarello, actually accurately capturing the true personality of Wonder Woman from time to time. But I digress. This is just plain visceral, violent fun. This is not your everyday Suicide Squad. This is a Suicide Squad that is look, it's this might be offensive to some people. Even Harley Quinn at the end refuses to confront the Joker because she's afraid the Joker is going to be able to talk her out of killing him. This is just this is having read, like, if you read all three back to back, this is a high pace, high octane adrenaline rush of a series. Actually, it reminded me a little bit of Brian Azzarello did a Birds of Prey one shot that was met with very mixed reviews as well. And the way he scripted Black Canary is basically sleeping with three guys. She picked up three guys in a bar and slept with them, and he got really the shit end of the stick for that. And here he is with this Get Joker, and there was a lot of scenes here in the second issue, especially with Harley Quinn doing a pole dance, strip dance with the Joker, and then this scene, the violence and the Joker meeting his untimely end. There's a scene here where Jason Todd rips a face off one of their assailants, and she's someone with a scarred face that wants to survive to ultimately kill her father who did that to her. She ends up, dying. Jason Todd is an asshole in this. Nobody in this comic is a hero, including Jason Todd. Really, all of them are really screwed up people, including Jason Todd. And that's kind of what I like about it. This is no holds barred. Brian Azzarello isn't pulling any punches, but it's precisely because he's doing that. You're either going to like this or you're going to hate it. There's probably not too many people that are going to fall in between. So, and I got to give kudos to Malev's art here. Malev, often his art, I think this art is, when he was doing the art with Bendis on Leviathan and Leviathan Checkmate, I didn't think it was very good. I didn't think he was very good at scripting the action scenes or the fight scenes. They were all just talking heads. Here, I think he's upped his art game a little bit here. I think it's better. I think he's gotten better at illustrating some action scenes that he has in the past. And I think this is a step up. I think he really given his artistic talent, I think he's actually increased his artistic skill here. And I want to give him credit for that. And so all in all, I enjoyed this.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed it a lot more had Amanda Waller stayed dead. I'm not even kidding. Like, that is what ruined this for me. It would have been an enjoyable story. I would have echoed a lot of what you said. It's clearly out of continuity, like you said. So there was literally no reason to bring her back. Leave her dead in the ground, gone forever. And this would be like way up there for me. The fact that they brought her back for no reason other than to show you can't kill Amanda Waller, I get that's even worse. That makes it worse than if they'd never killed her at all. And I'm being a little bit facetious, but not really. That really I was like, really? She's on the phone. She's alive. She's well enough to even be talking. Screw that.
Yeah.
Pissed me off. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I know. And how often does the Joker not kill somebody?
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, last book we're going to talk about in detail, Wonder Woman number 787. This is from Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan. Emmanuel Lupacchino does the pencils, Wade Von Graubiger on inks, Tamara Bonvillain on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. We have Diana. She's on Themyscira. She's talking to Nubia, and they're discussing everything that's happened recently, that being the trial of the Amazon event. I'm not going to get into any of that here because we covered it in all the spotlights. Don't want to rehash it. But Nubia basically kicks Wonder Woman off the island. I'm not really, but she's like, what are you still doing here? Trust us to clean up. Man's world needs you. She doesn't say that, but she doesn't say man's world, but she says, the world needs you. You need to go off and do your thing. And also there's other loose ends that you need to tie up. And Wonder Woman's like, oh, you mean like Altum? And so she goes out, she finds the sub where Altum is. We find out that everything that we thought we knew about him wasn't necessarily true. We sort of get his true origin. It makes a lot of sense, but it's all wrapped up here, just a couple of pages. And I'm left thinking, when he showed up in the pages of that Wonder Woman annual, it felt like something big, right? It wasn't even necessarily a story I wanted,
Yep.
but it felt like it was a big story. It felt like it had consequence. It felt like, something the Amazons were going to have to deal with. I even speculated that maybe when you say trial of Amazons, it was the Amazons being put on trial for stealing the island of Themyscira from these other beings that were there first, because that's what we were led to believe. And then this all gets wrapped up in just a few pages. It turns out that that's not what happened at all. Altum and his people were apparently dead. They were brought back to life by the gods, and they were tasked with cleansing Themyscira of beasts like Echinata and other beasts that were there, Cyclopses and whatnot. And Altum ended up him and the people that were resurrected ended up being betrayed by the gods, as the gods often do. And the only reason Altum survived was because he hid, and now he has all this guilt after being alone all this time. And he decides, as the submarine is in sinks, Wonder Woman says, you need to protect yourself and forgive yourself. And he's, I'm going to go down with the ship, and this is my penance, and this is my punishment. Not a terrible ending for it, but I guess I go back to why did they dedicate a whole annual to this character that wasn't even important enough to to have a whole issue to have his storyline resolved. It felt so anticlimactic. Oh, so he really wasn't very important at all. No wonder he only showed up for like 2 panels in the Trial of the Amazons, even though that wasn't a very good event anyway. So I don't know, man. It really feels like, does anybody editorially, does anybody creatively know what the hell they're doing with this Wonder Woman title right now? So that's the first half of the book. The second half of the book, it actually improves. We see Siegfried and Steve Trevor are actually roommates now, which is just funny because obviously they've both had a very close personal romantic relationship with Wonder Woman. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics there. And we see Etta Candy shows up and picks them up, and then they're attacked by these guys that Dr. Psycho has sort of brainwashed. And in the end, we see Dr. Psycho has recruited some other villains to join his Villainy Incorporated, and they're going to be who Wonder Woman is taking on next. Now, do I have faith that it's going to be high quality? Yeah. I mean, the jury's out. I have my doubts only because this Wonder Woman title has been so wildly inconsistent ever since this creative team has taken over. I have high hopes that it'll be really good, because I feel like this whole idea with going up against Villainy Incorporated and making it back into a superhero book is what would work, because I'm never a fan of Wonder Woman that leans into the god stuff, and that's all we had with her jumping around through different mythologies, and it got really old and dragged out for a really long time, and we went from that into the Trial of the Amazons, which was less than stellar. So, man, I feel like Wonder Woman really needs a win, and maybe shifting more towards the superhero and superheroic aspect of Diana, maybe that'll work. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I also hope that we get a consistent art team. So I think although Emmanuel Lupacchino's art is not my favorite, just getting some consistency on art, issue in and issue out, I think would help the story as well. And then the only thing I'll say about the young Diana story backup written by Jordi Belair with art by Paulina Gonchao is the same thing I always say. It doesn't belong as a backup because it's so wildly different in tone than the regular Wonder Woman story. Just either put them out like once, twice a year as a standalone graphic novel, or put it in its own book, something. I don't know. It doesn't work as a backup. I don't, even though I like the young Diana stories, I don't like reading them right after I've read the main story of adult Wonder Woman, because they're so, it's so jarring to go from one to the other. So anyway, what do you think about this Wonder Woman story, Rock?
Well, you very diplomatically stated exactly what I'll state, perhaps in a less diplomatic manner. I After Trial of the Amazons, I did a 35 thread rant on Twitter, and I made a prediction and I predicted correctly, to my astonishment, that Altum would be, and I was joking when I tweeted this. I was joking when I said Wonder Woman's going to is going to defeat Altum by wrapping her magic lasso around him and making him see the truth. And I was joking because that's what she's done before as a trope, and that's exactly what she does here. I mean, this is an Altum that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, Altum has been wandering alone. He's Altum the survivor, and his quest for revenge against the Amazons, and he finally decides to show his head, his white albino head now, and then all it takes to cure him is wrapping a magic lasso around him. Oh, I see the truth. Thank you, Diana. Please forgive me. And in a fit of depression, he's going to kill himself and go down with the submarine that Wonder Woman destroyed trying to find him, and Wonder Woman will just let him commit suicide and sink to his death. Now, I'm sure we'll see Altum again, but this is the end of this villain that played a major role in apparently disrupting the contest by, the domestic terrorism or his terrorism to disrupting the contest by blowing up the Coliseum and what have you, and blowing up a museum in Wonder Woman 2021 annual. And this is the big villain, and it's so Much Ado About Nothing. Nothing. This is a nothing burger. He was nothing but a plot device for Trial of the Amazons. He was an afterthought, and he's been dismissed with something as simple as Wonder Woman entering a submarine and wrapping her magic lasso around him, and he's done. He's off the playing field. This is inexcusable. In my mind, this is one-dimensional storytelling at its finest. Anybody could do this. And we're supposed to have faith that they're going to continue on this. But let's continue on. We already know about Chaos. The big villain Chaos was introduced early on, and then all of a sudden Chaos is the major villain in the contest. And then we continue on here, and suddenly we have Steve Trevor, I guess, moving in with Siegfried. I don't know, does Steve Trevor know that Siegfried slept with Diana? I guess, does he know? Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't care. Apparently he's seeing somebody. Okay, so clearly they're focusing on Wonder Woman now. Apparently it's suggested now that she's got feelings for Steve Trevor still, and she's a little concerned that maybe Steve's seeing somebody. Meanwhile, Siegfried, the other guy she slept with, is now, the two guys she slept with are now roommates. I actually find that kind of comical. That's kind of interesting. So that I even kind of like, because at least we got some actual drama going on. And we'll see what goes with that. It's a little bit odd that Siegfried and Steve Trevor don't really talk about Diana. I don't know why if they're guys, you're not going to tell me that these guys over drinks aren't going to talk about, they're not going to talk about Diana? Come on. Show me that scene instead of all this superfluous stuff. But what the most grating thing on this, which I find is so tropey that I'm not even gonna be harsh about it. But Dr. Psycho here, oh my God. I mean, this is so tropey. I mean, he's I don't even know what he's saying. Are they trying to make him an insane Jordan Peterson? Which, I love Jordan Peterson. I read his book. I think it's great. But are they trying to suggest that, he starts talking, Psycho's talking about the human spirit dependent on hierarchies. Depression is on the rise due to the failing structure of modern society. What does that even mean? Naturally, humans desire order. We believe we wish to be in control, but look within yourself. Is that truly the case? And he's ranting about nonsense. Happiness is hard enough to come by. Don't feed us a shame sandwich for not caring. All this amidst freedom from domination. You can manifest it all. Together, all is possible. I don't even know what he's saying. So, now, first of all, leaving aside the fact that I always thought he was a known fugitive, but I guess not. He's got access to a TV channel that, I don't know, is manipulating people, deceiving people. What is he really saying? What is he doing wrong? Okay, so he's spouting nonsense. There's a suggestion here, clearly implied, that he's a misogynist and he hates women and he hates Wonder Woman. Okay. He's a short white male. He looks ridiculous. So you make him, I mean, he's a character that looks ridiculous. So by all means, make him spout misogynist rhetoric to really hammer the point home. Thank you very much. This is so over the top. I get it. It's a Wonder Woman comic, so the enemy has to be a misogynist. I get it. And then when we get to the end, his Villainy Incorporated, you got Dr. Poison, who is, I don't know, Dr. Poison is this, she looks so like all of this is so over the top. It feels like I'm watching a Saturday morning cartoon. I mean, Professor Calculus, who manipulates the stock market and he's funding them. And then, of course, there's Sweetheart, the Wonder Woman clone that he calls Sweetheart, who's useless to him, who he just uses around because she looks like Wonder Woman and he can use and abuse her. So he's really, really a misogynist. In case you missed it in the first 4 or 5 previous issues, he's really, really a misogynist. So now he's even got a clone Scar of Wonder Woman that he calls Sweetheart. And then you got the Twin Shadows. I don't even know what to do. Here's my concern. They squandered Ultim. They squandered the use of Chaos. And now suddenly we've got all these characters in Villainy Incorporated. I don't trust, none of these are going to get a fair shake. All of these are very potentially interesting characters, including Dr. Psycho here. Don't get me wrong. But I've gotten zero indication so far that any of these are going to be actually developed to any potential. And even if they are developed, I've got no faith that there's going to be any payoff based upon the insulting disregard of Ultim as a villain. And that's what's so heartbreaking about all this. And I hope I'm wrong, but at this point, this is comedy. This is comedy. The Villainy Incorporated comedy, and this is comedy. And amongst this, the comedy of villains here, they're comedic in their jokes, and then to throw it in, we got. Oh well, at least she's got 2 guys on the side that not only has she slept with both of them, but now they're roommates. So let's get the drama. So I don't know what to think, but this is all over the place. It's messy, but it's kind of fun maybe from a comedic point of view. But I got to tell you, man, I just there's no sophistication of a plot. Like I have no idea where the plot's going here. What's the motivation, other than we know that Dr. Psycho hates Wonder Woman and hates women in general. What's the plot? Like what's the plot? Like I don't get it. Anyways.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a good Wonder Woman run, unfortunately. So anyway, some other books you might want to be on the lookout for. There is a compilation, a special Batman the Night issue, which collects the first 3 issues of that series. I think we're up to issue number, I think we reviewed 6 just recently. So that's the Chip Zdarsky, Carmine DiGomenico run. If you missed it, you can get the first 3 issues in a collected softcover. Also, we have some other collections. Justice League Volume 1 Prisms hardcover, which I think that collects the first of Brian Michael Bendis' run. And then we have Batman vs. Bigby, a Wolf in Gotham trade paperback. And there is a DC poster portfolio from Frank Quitely that's coming out this week as well. So, yeah, that's it. That's the DC books for this week. As I said, even though technically it already came out, not coming out on Tuesday, I got to give Dark Crisis Zero my book of the week. I thought it was by far and away the best DC book. A little bit of a down week. I agree with Rocky there. So, what about you, Rocky? Favorite book?
Well, let me see here. My favorite book, I would probably go with. I'll go with I Am Batman. I'm gonna go with I Am Batman.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, don't forget to check out our new Comic Wednesday episode that comes out hopefully tomorrow. I will be on the road, but I'm hoping to record it from the hotel room. And I do have some other interviews coming up later this week that I'm doing from the road as well. So what about you, Rocky? Any content people should be on the lookout for?
I actually, no, this week I don't have time for any content. I'm going to be knee deep in work, and so I'll probably be silent on my channel until next week when we review next week's DC Comics.
All right, well, there you have it, everybody. Thanks for joining us as always. Don't forget to head over to YouTube, subscribe to Rocky's channel, a comic space boom ! If you are checking us out on YouTube and you're curious about the other content that comes out from the Comic Source audio only, just go to your favorite podcasting app or podcasting platform on your smart device, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. That's going to do it for this episode. Rest in peace to the mighty George Perez. We're going to miss you, buddy. That does it, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
See you later.